As I was mentioning, it's very important for our community to get involved in the political process. I'm going to start by discussing the importance of voting. A community that votes is a community that is heard. And if you're not voting, your voice is not being heard. And politicians will not come and ask what you're looking for. You know, some of them will. I'm not saying all politicians. Some politicians are principled and they will come regardless and ask what you're looking for. There are principled politicians out there. But also there are politicians that are not, you know, they look more for the vote. So if you're voting, your concerns are going to get reflected. So it is very important for our community to be involved in the political process. And the truth is our community is underrepresented in the voting process. We are below what the average rate of our Canadian society when it comes to voting. We are part of Canada, and yet we vote at a lower percentage than our Canadian peers, than the rest of Canada. And it's a shame, because it means that our voices are represented at the same degree. And we have concerns, a lot we share with our Canadian peers, and some that we are more aware of. But by the way, when I say that, a lot of our Canadian peers also care for the same concerns that we do, even when they're concerned Muslims, because there's a lot of, we look at principled politicians out there that care for what our community cares for, even if they're concerned with us, because they are principled politicians. There are many of those. In any case, it is very important that we go out and vote. I will give a quick summary of what the Canadian Muslim Forum represented to politicians, of the various parties. And I'll cover the publications or the pamphlets that we put out with regards to this issue. So what we presented to politicians and our policies of concern were, first, we wanted a more positive discourse with regards to the Muslim community. A lot of what goes on these days is negative with regards to Muslims in the discourse. And we do look for that, instead of it being, oh, what is the place of minorities in society and such, it should be more about embracing what minorities bring to society. Each minority, Muslims included, but also other minorities, have something to contribute to the Canadian mosaic. The Canada we live in is a representation of everyone. It's a Canadian mosaic, and we are part of it. So, and this is what we're looking for politicians to discuss. Instead of it all the time being, you know, particulars and scaremongering, not just from Muslims, but everyone. But in particular, when we look at some of what's being heard out there, a lot of it has to do with Muslims. In particular, we talked about, the second point was addressing Islamophobia. In Canada, and this is statistics, but there were I think 2 studies. One said that the 2 most discriminated communities was Muslims and African Americans. And another study, I think, had Muslims and Aboriginals. So, you know, we made both lists. So that's not a good thing. But I mean, it means that it has to be addressed. In that sense, we are asking politicians to take a more serious approach to address this issue, so that it's no longer acceptable in the discourse to, in a sense, single out Muslims. The third thing we addressed was dignity and respect for women who choose the hijab. The discussions that are going on today about limiting jobs to Muslim women who wear the hijab, and I mean, to say about that is, of course, it limits, and in a sense it's discriminatory, is a discriminatory employment policy. And by the way, this is not just our opinion. Julius Gray, one of the lawyers, human rights lawyers here in Montreal, wrote a piece, I think it was in the Montreal Gazette, saying that this law would not stand once challenged. So it doesn't stand because it actually discriminates against minorities who choose employment, so it actually differentiates between them. So we want, especially from our perspective as the Muslim community, we want that there be no discrimination with regards to employment for women who choose to wear the hijab. The fourth issue is employment. The Muslim community in particular, and other minorities, not just us, but from our perspective, the Muslim community, minorities face issues with regards to employment and discrimination, and we want this to be addressed so that there is no problems, that minorities do not suffer from discrimination in employment. The fifth issue is language training. It's providing more language training so that people who arrive in Canada have opportunities for work. This is with regards to the policy concerns. If you look at the screen, There are two publications. This one here is the rankings for writings, and what we did here is essentially assess the entire political landscape. We looked at the platforms in which political parties are, where the parties stand, and we also looked at which party, because not all the parties are strong in all ridings. Different parties are contesting different ridings, are stronger in different ridings. It takes it takes all that into consideration. The other document, there we go, there it is basically a summary of the election platforms of the different parties with regards to different issues. And you'll notice from this document that we as the Muslim community care for all concerns. So our concerns as the Muslim community are, of course, mentioned there with regards to Islamophobia and such, but we also, as the Muslim community, care for their environment, we care for healthcare, we care about the Jewish rights, wherever you fall on those arguments. But we care about these issues. We care about the laws that came with the protests and such. So this document provides a full picture, and this is for the Muslim community to decide, so that not only do they take the list, but also are aware of the issues that are being discussed in the public sphere. I'll end by discussing about getting out the vote, and this is where going back to where I began, which is essentially, it is very important that we get out the vote and start participating more in the electoral process. And not just attendees here, go and find 5 other people who, you have a feeling that they weren't going to go out and vote, and get them to vote. That's how the vote gets out. People telling people. That's how political parties do it. They have, of course, more sophisticated methods. They use phone banks and such, but we have word of mouth. And by the way, this is, again, as I mentioned, not just our problem. Sometimes that's what people do. There are organizations for youth, by the way, the youth in Canada. There are organizations that go out and tell them to get a vote, to get the youth vote, to be more representative. So I do encourage that. Do participate, send comments to the press, call in radio shows, express your concerns, generally on everything. Issues that pertain specifically to Muslims and issues that pertain to you as Canadians. So address all these issues. And with that, I'll end, and if you have any questions.